Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the Raycon Everyday Buds. This is the second gen model, aka 2024 variant. Particularly those in the audio community may know that this company has had a pretty heavy hand in their marketing, so we can draw a parallel to Beats by Dr. Dre in that you're perhaps paying a little bit more for the brand compared to the actual product. At least that was the stereotype. So didn't always have the best reputation from a purely value perspective in the past, at least. And so with that background, I just want to be upfront that this is an honest review. As always, it's never a sponsored video, just sharing my own thoughts and opinions about this item. Now, if you're like me and have been aware of Raycon's presence in the past, you may vaguely know that their everyday buds have been around for a couple of years now, in fact, since the company first launched. But when I was digging a little bit deeper on their product page, I was quite surprised that the design looked quite different compared to what I remembered. And so it turns out that even though they're still calling these the same name of everyday buds, just like how Apple hasn't changed the naming convention for AirPods, it's the same thing here. They've quietly updated design as well as the feature set, which is why we're referring to these as the second gen model. It's a more significant overhaul from a design point of view versus the pairs in the past, which had a bit more of a round shape. As you can tell, their colors are also now different, including this more pale green variant, slightly more streamlined from a design point of view. So it's a soft relaunch of sorts, and as part of this newer generation, the buds here now have active noise cancellation built on in. It was missing on their previous generation, allowing you to now block out engine sounds as well as fan noises when you're listening to music, which is nice to find. And the other part that I was kind of surprised to learn about is the pricing has seemingly become more affordable as well, compared to, again, the early days where perhaps the value didn't seem to be super strong. You can now find these everyday buds under $70 on their site, so it seems like there are some more aggressive promotions and discounts going on. So now with ANC built in, plus a slightly lower price point while retaining features including built-in EQ controls, so there's a bass boosted mode, a treble boost mode, and also a balanced mode that you can click on the buds to directly control, in addition to supporting wireless charging on the battery case. You can pop it onto a charging mat to top it up, similar to the AirPods. Now at a more affordable price, I actually think it might be a worthwhile time to give it a chance, rather than writing it off just because they've been a little oversaturated with their marketing presence. So let's find out if this newly refreshed variant is any good as we dive a little bit deeper. As for some of the other top-line specs, they claim to last around 8 hours of continuous audio listening, although if you have ANC turned on, that number is a little closer to 6 hours in my testing, and with the battery case, you get upwards of 32 hours combined, which is also not bad. And the newer colors I do think look a little bit more attractive in my opinion, versus the previous design was a bit more loud compared to this new one. It seems a bit more subtle, slightly prettier as well, with a two-tone finish with more rounded edges and corners. It has IP66 water resistance rating, so for sweat and rain it should survive, and has again built-in microphones not only for ANC as well as calls, including support for functions like multi-point connectivity. That means you can pair with both a phone as well as a computer simultaneously and automatically switch back and forth depending on whatever device is playing back audio, and technically it's using Bluetooth 5.3. That being said, what hasn't really changed is Raycon have yet to come out with a companion app support, so that would have given you even more ability to perhaps customize the controls as well as find even more EQ options, which would have been nice to see as increasingly more brands have that app support. And also keep in mind that these are using standard Bluetooth audio codecs of SBC and AAC, which actually isn't too big of an issue for iPhone users, considering they could never really leverage LDAC or aptX codecs to begin with. But for Android users, technically, again, high-res audio wireless codecs like those can transmit a little bit more detail if you are more of a discerning listener. But keeping in mind that these are their most budget pair of buds, and we are already seeing some gradual improvements like more features at a lower price, I'll gladly take that, and fingers crossed for even more additions in future revisions. Also, giving credit where it's due, a larger brand can at least produce more variants from a customization and color point of view, so that is one advantage here. For instance, if the classic black or the green, blues are not to your liking, you can find shades such as orange, red, even limited edition colors like this Jolly Rancher Gummies edition of pink and green, which definitely sets it apart from the crowd versus smaller brands that might only have one or two colors. More customization options are always welcome. And last but not least, I'll also mention that I did see they have a silicone sleeve available now as well, adding a bit of protection and even further customization to the buds. Again, showing some nice attention to detail that not every single brand, particularly smaller ones, will offer you. So you have variants including this Galaxy variant, quite colorful. Here's one inspired by concrete that looks quite realistic. This one here by water versus a kind of pink cloud, and also the one that we have here is more of this yellow sunset gradient finish. Starting with the buds here, we have some of the same features touted on the edge, including a transparency audio mode that will use the mics to amplify the sound around you, allowing you to hear what's going on, have a conversation without removing the buds. They're still going to be very lightweight, and this is again the green version. Inside here we have just a quick user guide right on top, pretty well presented, and then down below here we have the actual wireless headphones, and then further down here we'll find accessories including the silicone tips. You actually get 4 additional sizes for a more snug fit, and they are color coordinated again with the buds that you're picking up. There's a standard USB Type-C charging cable if you don't want to use wireless Qi charging, and then finally down below here you also get a couple of stickers from Raycon. So again, giving credit where it's due, it's clear that some of the cost is going into a slightly better presentation and packaging. We'll take a closer look at the buds here in a moment, but first the, again, optional case for style and protection, which by the way claims to still function when it comes to wireless charging without impeding that capability. So it does add just a splash of color to your device, making it also a little bit more grippy, in addition to having a lanyard strap as well, which can be attached here onto the side, making it a little easy to carry around onto a keychain, for instance, when you're on the go. And otherwise, the sleeve here just slips on in using these 2 pieces, still allowing us to make out the charging indication light, working well enough from a functionality point of view, so not bad again from a design perspective. At least it is a bit more colorful and distinctive if you like having a splash of color. And by the way, the top of the case also has a 3M sticky that you can peel off if you want to attach more firmly onto the top of the lid without it slipping off. Now taking a closer look at the actual case, it remains quite compact, constructed out of a plastic build, and we have that 2-tone finish going on with a status LED light, plus the back here features the wireless charging receiver, as well as the USB Type-C if you want to use wired charging. And so just to serve as a quick demonstration, popping it on top of wireless charging, reverse charging phones, or other Qi charging pads will give it a quick top up without plugging anything in. The hinge here also stays open without too many issues. The buds, of course, are held into place magnetically, pretty securely, and we have access to touch controls, which thankfully allow you to master pretty much everything since there is no additional app that you can rely on. For instance, you can tap once on the left and the right sides to bring the volume higher or lower, as well as long hold for 1.5 seconds on the right side to turn the ANC on, transition into the audio transparency ambient mode, and then hold on it again to turn it completely off, versus on the left side, if you hold for 1.5 seconds, you can transition between the built-in EQ controls of the aforementioned bass boosted, treble boost, aka pure sound, as well as a balanced mode, which is in between. And double tapping allows us to skip tracks as well. So all these commands at least are built on in, unlike some buds, which don't give you volume. And from a comfort point of view, I will say they are relatively light and still pretty conformant, particularly with the different tips that you're able to choose between. Now, one other feature if we were comparing them with AirPods would be missing a proximity sensor for automatically playing and pausing the sound if you're wearing and then removing the buds, for instance. So that is one extra that is reserved on maybe some of their more pro models, but it is what it is. Built predominantly out of this coarse plastic material, and then having some of the LED lights and microphones scattered across the edges. Also, a quadruple click allows you to access the voice assistant on your phone, and you can still answer or reject calls as they're incoming. Although if you wanted a dedicated low latency mode for gaming and media consumption, unfortunately that still isn't baked directly into the controls of this base model, though they do have a pair of gaming buds as well as pro buds which do incorporate some of those features. And now moving into audio quality and performance, the most important part of any pair of wireless buds, I would say these are actually a little bit better than I was expecting. Now, if you are a audiophile or super discerning listener, there's always room for improvement. In fact, as the name suggests, these are more casual style buds, but at least they are easily on par with the Apple AirPods, if not a touch better in terms of bass due to the tighter silicone tips that they have on these buds. So the sound quality, I would say, is decent. Though to be fair, in 2024, this category of wireless buds have become pretty mature, so for under $100, it's actually hard now to find a pair of buds that is outright bad. Differences are tighter than ever because the baseline is already much improved compared to when the first generation AirPods were brand new. They were still using Bluetooth 4.2, 4.3. Connectivity wasn't as stable, and back then, there was still more of a bubble surrounding the true wireless space, resulting in greater inconsistency from pair of bud to the other. Now, connectivity across the board isn't going to be super problematic, so surprisingly, I wasn't that disappointed with the audio experience on these. Honestly, not that bad, and if we had to dissect that a little bit further, there is a nice touch of bass. It's actually not super overpowering, but certainly you'll feel its presence when there is a drum beat. If you're listening to pop music, EDM music, it is for sure noticeable without overpowering the mids and the trebles, which at the same time were solid enough when it came to detail as well as volume for me to still enjoy the majority of tracks I was listening to, again getting loud enough for general exercise and wearing in a casual everyday manner. Now yes, you can still find more pro-sounding buds, which pack in the aforementioned aptX or LDAC support with even more refined drivers that can squeeze out more detail in trebles, for instance, if you are listening super closely as more of a hi-fi enthusiast or audiophile. But again, for the casual consumer, that is, I wouldn't say that these are noticeably worse than many of the other wireless buds sitting around $50 to $100. The controls felt responsive enough in my usage, as well as never really faced any major connectivity issues either. They were relatively easy to operate, reliable enough, and that simplicity, I guess, is also what they're touting. The 3 built-in EQ profiles, I will say the bass boosted versus treble boosted do tend to make a subtle difference. So again, if you're listening to acoustic tracks, you want to emphasize vocals, you can use more of that pure sound mode, versus the bass boosted mode does provide a bit more kick in the, again, lower frequencies. However, it still isn't super aggressive, I would say, considering these are still small buds at the end of the day, but definitely helps if you're more of a bass head. And briefly touching on the ANC, I could also notice a difference with it being turned on or off. I could still hear a touch of distortion if straining my ears super closely, but honestly it's not bad. And again, with it turned on, you just are able to drown out some of the fan noises, lower engine sound slightly better without turning the volume up quite as high. You don't necessarily get additional tiers of the ANC intensity though, like low, medium, high, that you might get from more pro models with, again, an app support, but it's still nice to find on now their most budget pair of buds. Similarly, the audio transparency mode was also effective enough, amplifying voices at an adequate volume level as well. And briefly touching on call quality, I would say the microphones here are also around average. I would say this might be the weakest link, in fact, out of all the attributes, just because even though they do claim to have some ENC or environmental noise cancellation for calls, the mic is inevitably further away from your mouth compared to a stem type design like the AirPods, and the further distance, the more difficult it is for the microphone if you are in a louder or crowded space. So I would argue that these are better for music as opposed to calls, but it can get by if you are in a slightly more quiet space. So that's been a quick look at the new and improved version of the Everyday Buds, and I come away actually kind of surprised. Again, this is an honest review, sharing some of my impressions, because based on some of the rumblings I've heard in the audio community, I was actually quite worried, and I guess had my expectations maybe a little too low, but when actually picking these up, considering the price is now more reasonable compared to when they launched back in the day, coupled with a slightly more attractive design in my opinion, offering decent enough sound, which got sufficiently loud and a nice mix of, again, mids and trebles for me to get sucked into the music without too many problems. Wearing for light exercise purposes, I actually felt like they were a little bit better than expected. Again, a couple of extras here as well, such as the wireless charging case that you won't find in many other budget buds, for instance. So again, maybe it's just because my expectations were so different coming in, but it overall results in a good enough pair of casual everyday buds, even if arguably certain brands like JLab, Soundcore by Anker, Xiaomi, Redmi may still offer slightly better value per se, but at least the sound quality on these are now on a similar level, I would say, for the casual listener, plus also having a few extras that, again, you may not see on some of the alternatives, like the Qi charging and additional peripherals and colors that you can pick. There's still a couple of surprises here that does show improvement at the very least. As a compact, no frills pair of buds, if you like the way they look, I would say these are surprisingly not so shabby. So I'm actually coming away glad overall that I gave these a chance, all things considered. You can check out more details if you are interested in the links down below. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. It's been just a quick look at the revised Everyday Buds from Raycon.